guys, welcome back for the third day of Sub-0 Reset here on the Hacker Stage. Today our first speaker is Gustavo Gonzalez. He is the open source engineering manager at OpenZeppelin, and today he'll be presenting to us how to create a secure parachain using OpenZeppelin Pallet Abstraction. Gustavo, take it away, sir.
Awesome, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for making here and those who are tuning in live. My name is Gustavo, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about how we can reimagine developer experience using Pallet Abstraction and OpenZeppelin templates. So some real quick context about me. I work as an engineering manager at OpenZeppelin, and I spend most of my time building great open source libraries, mostly focused around smart contracts and parachains. And needless to say from this presentation, I'm very bullish on app chains in general. I think they are the natural evolution to smart contracts in many ways. Quick background for those of you who don't know OpenZeppelin. We've been around in the Web3 ecosystem since 2015, so it's coming close to 10 years now. Our mission is to protect the open economy, and as you can see from this slide, we work with some of the leading providers, leading companies in the Web3 ecosystem, and we've been building in Polkadot for the past year, a bit more actually, and we're very excited to continue this path. Okay, so what can you expect from this presentation? I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about what are in general OpenZeppelin runtime templates if you haven't been following our progress. Then we'll dive into the meat of the presentation, which is what is Pallet Abstraction and why you should care. Then I'll show you some code, which is the fun part. And then you will let me rant for a couple minutes about why I'm excited about this, and I think you should too. So first of all, what are OpenZeppelin runtime templates? Like I said, we've been building in the Polkadot ecosystem for a year now, and we've learned a lot. Basically, the first thing is that we know that Frame and Substrate are very powerful, but the reality is that they still have a steep learning curve. So our mission when we started building it here is how can we make it as easy as possible for people to spin up their parachains with secure defaults and security in mind, right? We want to make sure that if you spin up a chain using our templates, you inherit all the security from our templates. So we've done 2 major releases since that moment. The first one is the generic template, which is a vanilla parachain template that you can use to build your chain. It doesn't have any virtual machine, anything. It's just all the basic pallets that you can expect so that you can grab it and build on top of that. Then on our second release, we took that generic template and we added frontier pallets and other stuff, and also some native account abstraction to allow you to spin up an EVM chain on top of that, also with all the secure configurations and default. And this third release, what we're focusing on is basically how can we make this and improve the developer experience a lot. Because we want to build a lot of other templates for other use cases like DeFi, gaming, NFTs, etc. But we realized that our mission on how to make it this as simple as possible was still lacking some fundamental pieces. So we set up to do that. Okay, so what's the issue then? If you said that you've made it much easier for people to spin up their chain, why do you need to focus on developer experience? While we are very happy with some of the results and with improvements, we think that it's still too complex, especially for newcomers, and there's still too many parameters that you need to be aware and are exposed to the end developers. Also, as I said, as we can agree the amount of templates we had, we only have 2 today, but we plan to expand. We realized that we're repeating ourselves a lot. We had a lot of code repetition in our templates, and we don't think that's great because, well, it's a lot of places that you have to make changes, it's easy to forget, and if you fix an issue in one of the templates, you have to go to another and then try to fix that as well. It's also hard to adopt by existing parachains, right? If today you're running a parachain on Polkadot mainnet, on Kusama, or whatever, it's very hard for you to take this. You would have to go to a repo and copy-paste the parts that make sense to you and try to incorporate it into your chain. And related to that, you cannot just pick up some parts, right? You take the whole template, or you have to come and copy-paste the things that you like. So we think we can do better. So we set up on a mission. And we think the solution is what we call Pallet Abstraction, basically. We started discussing with Parity, how can we make this better and make it easier for teams to adopt? And we came up with this solution, which is Pallet Abstraction. What is Pallet Abstraction? It is a set of macros that abstract away a lot of this complexity. So they hide a lot of the configurations and a lot of the complexity that you usually encounter in Frame to make it as easy as possible to spin up your chain. So what it does, as a kind of high-level view is we take a bunch of these pallets and we put it in groups. Today we have 6 groups and we plan to create more, which allow you to basically put a runtime with bigger pieces, bigger building blocks, instead of having these tiny building blocks where 90% of those types and configurations most developers don't want to be exposed to, and they only want to modify a few of these. So today we have system, assets, consensus, governance, XCM, and EVM. And we're really looking forward for people's feedback on how we have grouped this and what makes sense and what doesn't, so that we can keep iterating over it. OK, so like I said, they are a set of macros. We have both declarative and procedural macros for how to make Pallet abstraction work. Here are our goals, our North Stars of why we're building this and how we're building this. The first one, of course, is we want to reduce lines of code, right? Both in our templates and in people's end code, we want to make sure that we minimize the amount of boilerplate that developers need to use by using these macros. We want to make sure that they include sensible defaults. We want to make sure that whatever we add as a default is something that makes sense for most teams. You can go ahead and change it if you need, but we want to make sure that we're not giving you anything that is super surprising or something that you don't want or don't expect. High configurability. This is something that we still need to work on, and we plan to iterate, but we want to not only allow newcomers to use this, but we would like that existing teams and advanced users can grab this and still find it useful because they have the option to tweak it and change all the things that they need. And of course, security focus. Anything that we launch in the ecosystem, we want to make sure that it is as secure as possible. That's why we're about to audit this third version of the release. Some trade-offs that we've made in this, and I'm talking about this out loud because I think it's important, is that they are more opinionated, right? And that is by design. So they are less configurable than if you just use plain frame. That's just the reality, but we think that's a feature, not a bug, because we wanted to make it as easy as possible. And then they can be more intertwined, but we think that can be easily fixed. Today, there are some pieces that have dependencies between each other. So if you use some of these groups, then you might have dependencies on others that we want to remove and make it as modular as possible. And as an example of how much code you can remove with this is just from 2 PRs of incorporating the abstraction into our templates. Basically, we were able to remove more than 2,000 lines of code across both of our templates. So, and this is just the first iteration. We want to continue. And in my mind, the North Star is allow you to spin up a parachain that has advanced functionality and does useful stuff with less than 1,000 lines of code of Rust. OK, so let's get to the middle of the thing. Show me some code. The image on the left is probably very small, and there's not a lot you can read. That's partly intentional because I wanted to show you how much easier and how much cleaner it is to use the macros versus just using the regular frame constructs, basically. On the left, you can see the usual configuration that you would need to do to implement all the traits and define all the types that you need to your parachain. And basically, this is not everything, right? I put like a lot of the 3 dots and ellipses because you have a bunch more types that you need to define, and that's just for configuring all the system-related stuff. While on the right, you can see that using our impl OpenZeppelin system macro, you can configure your system config, which is a trait, with just, what are they? 8 configurations, right? Those are the ones that we make you explicitly configure. But there are others where you have sensible defaults that are behind the scenes, so if you want to change them, you can go ahead and tweak with them and see and move them around, and they are secure enough that if you touch something that has a dependency on our stuff, the macro will catch it and it will break the build. So we did the same with construct runtime. The other one I showed you was a declarative macro. This is a procedural macro that we call OpenZeppelin construct runtime that basically, same thing, allows you to hide all of this complexity in the left with this thing on the right, and we actually plan to make it even cleaner in the coming weeks. Basically, instead of having to define all the instances for your pallets and manually mapping them one-to-one to what you want as the end result of your construct runtime, which is what you use to basically put your parachain together, to pull your runtime together, we give you this macro, and then you just define a module, and all the structs are just all those like big building blocks that we saw on one of the first slides. And you use this abstraction decorator that tells the macros that they are actually modules and not pallets. But this is something that I think we can remove shortly, and it will be even cleaner. You will just have the macro, the module, and all the structs that you want. And the nice thing about this is that it doesn't sacrifice extensibility a lot, because yes, you can use our existing modules, our big packages, but you can also add your own pallets, right? If you create your own pallet for some custom functionality for your parachain, or there's something from an existing theme that you want to use, you can basically go ahead and add individual pallets to this construct runtime. Okay, next up, import runtime. I think this one was too big if I wanted to fit the old version, so I just went with how it looks now. And basically, similar structure, it is a procedural macro, OpenZeppelin runtime APIs, and this allows you to expose all your APIs to your node and to external services that need to consume it. And basically, same thing, you define all the modules that you want, and just a few types that you explicitly define, all the rest is abstracted away with secure defaults for you. Okay, so as I said, this is part of our v3.0 release. And while our main focus has been building on this pallet abstraction, that's not the only thing we're shipping. Besides some bug fixes and other smaller improvements, there are other two big things that I'm particularly excited about besides pallet abstraction, which is SnowBridge integration. So if you use any of our templates from v3 on, they will include all the configuration for SnowBridge, all the XCM types and configs that you need to be able to use the general purpose and trustless bridge between Ethereum and Polkadot. So that's something I'm very excited about. And we know that building a parachain is not only about the code. You also probably want someone to manage the infrastructure if your team doesn't want to do that. So we are working with Tansy to allow you to use our templates with them as an infrastructure provider. But since they use a different consensus mechanism, we had to make some changes to our template, so we're releasing that as part of v3. And funnily enough, this is something where pallet abstraction was also very useful, because otherwise you had to find a way in all the templates to switch the consensus mechanism that you were using and the pallets that you were using. But with pallet abstraction, we were able to kind of hide away all that complexity and just give you a feature flag that you can change if you want the regular consensus or if you want Tansy's consensus mechanism. And if you do, you can use the wrap-chain infrastructure. Okay, we're coming close to the end. So why I'm excited about this, and I hope you are too. Like I said, I think app chains are the natural progression for rollups. And the nice thing is that I think that finally the industry is catching up to this and realizing we see in other ecosystem people moving more from smart contracts to our app chains. And I think in the Polkadot ecosystem, we have a lot of the tools that we need to build app-specific chains. And also with abundant block space, with core time and Jam, core time already released and Jam coming, there will be many new use cases that are possible that maybe are not today, and that means more incentives to build out your chain, right? I think today is very limited amount of parachains that we can fit into a relay chain, but that's changing and will continue to change, allow people to experimenting with not so much bigger commitments, which I think it's a killer use case to be able to, and a big value proposition to spin up your chain if you have a lot of more block space and you can basically set up your own rules and you don't have to put a lot of capital in front. Okay, so thank you. This is my Telegram and Twitter handle. If you want to reach out, I'll also be around. And I don't know how we're doing with time, but maybe we have time for a couple questions.
Plenty of time. If you guys have any questions, yes?
Hello, hello. Hey, so a couple of days ago, Keon talked about the Polkadot SDK kind of like crate in order to simplify a lot of this runtime development stuff. Is the work you're doing here kind of in parallel to that, or do you see a way to integrate some of the Polkadot SDK changes into this?
Yeah, great question. Actually, a lot of this work is sparked by conversations we've been having with Kian and Sean. It is in parallel, so we're releasing this, but as these changes in the Polkadot SDK are coming online, we'll make sure to backport them, and if something there is simpler than the abstractions we're building, we're just going to stick with that. But for things that are still too complex and too generic, because Frame is always going to be unopinionated, we're going to kind of abstract that complexity away. Yeah, great question.
All right, cool.
Any other questions? No? In that case, Gustavo, thank you so much for taking the time and showing us.
Thank you.
This concludes for the first half of the day. Our next stage would be at 2 p.m. and it will be with the good folks of Web0, a discussion about how can we improve UI UX in the ecosystem, something we've been lacking for quite a long time. See you again soon.